The battle against disinformation using AI. Welcome back to Techstination. I'm Fred Fishkin. Joining us from Gigafact is co-founder and director of operations, Robyn Sundlee. Hi, Robyn.
Thanks so much for having me, Fred.
A pleasure to meet you. Now, Gigafact is a fact-checking accelerator for newsrooms. We've had your co-founder with us before, but let's refresh for the audience a bit about the background of what you are and how this came to be.
Yeah. And thanks for the chance to come on and talk a little bit about Gigafact. So we are a tech-forward nonprofit. We were founded in 2022, and we're really focused on the intersection of local journalism and information integrity. So because local journalism is kind of the most trusted area of media, for a lot of Americans, we think that there's a real opportunity to bring this kind of fact-checking work to try to assess claims and weigh in on the confusions that everyday Americans have around what's true and what's not. We think that local journalists are really kind of the best messengers for trying to establish some foundations for what is actually true and help people kind of sift through this crazy new information environment that we're in. So what we've been doing for the past 2 years is helping a set of local and regional newsrooms from around the country publish what we call fact briefs. They are really short, pithy fact checks that are all they all start with a question and then a yes or no answer. One example that one of our organizations published a couple months ago, there was a rumor floating around on Reddit that was about, is it true that the Chinese own all North Texas tollways? And this was a viral rumor that was circulating, and our partner Fort Worth Report was able to publish a fact brief that actually debunked this rumor. So this is kind of what we're trying to do, is give newsrooms the tools that they need in order to address these kinds of rumors and confusions. And what we're focused on now, which we may get into, is helping newsrooms identify the claims that politicians are making across the internet. But we can get into that a little bit more.
Well, let's do that. We are in the midst of this election season, obviously. Lots of misinformation out there, coming really from all directions sometimes. So tell us about the role that you are playing with these news outlets and how it works. You've got a tool that's called Parser.
Yeah, correct. So something that we heard from the newsrooms that we work with is it's really hard to just keep track of what politicians are saying, because their speech is kind of scattered across the internet in various different formats. So for example, if you wanted to know what a given congressperson thinks about something, you can look at their Twitter feed, you can look at their press releases, but at the same time, they're also doing podcast interviews. They're giving speeches at events kind of around the state. They're doing town halls, and not to mention everything that they have said in the years prior to the election. So if you're trying to get a really clear view of what this person thinks and sort of the claims that they're making and how those stack up against what they used to say about that subject, it's actually really difficult to gather all of that information, because it's also in audio format or video format, which takes a lot of time for journalists to parse. So what we have done is we have leveraged some of the new AI technology to make it easier for journalists to synthesize audio content. So when politicians do debates, when they do interviews on 2-hour-long podcasts, when they show up to town halls, all of that audio material can be synthesized using new AI technologies, and that's exactly what Parser does.
And when you say synthesized, explain to the audience what you mean by that.
Yeah, so if you were to sit and listen to, for example, a debate between two congressional candidates, if you're a journalist and you're kind of putting on your journalist hat, you're looking for, okay, what exactly does this person talk about? What are their talking points? What are the claims that they're specifically making? Do I need to fact check those claims before I kind of deliver this to the audience? What exactly was said in this debate, and so forth. And so what Parser does is it pulls out all of the most journalistically relevant subjects and claims that a given individual makes in a piece of audio. And what's cool about how Parser works is it's able to home in on where that specific individual of interest is speaking. So if you had a debate with, 3 candidates and 1 moderator, you don't want everything that everybody else is talking about to be in this synthesis that's about what this one person is saying. And so Parser is able to isolate on this person of interest and only synthesize what they are saying and break it out into subjects and claims that can be quickly skimmed by a journalist, and they can use it in their reporting. So it's a real power
Let's
assist.
take a look at, for those who are watching this, let's take a look at what you're talking about.
So this is what Parser looks like. This is kind of the home page. Over here on the left, you can see all of the most recently updated profiles for public figures and people of interest to the journalism community. So some of these names are going to be familiar to political junkies and so forth. I'm going to take you into a specific profile here that's kind of interesting to me. So I used to live in Alaska, and Nicholas Begich is the congressional candidate in Alaska. So I've been kind of following this race. I vote in Alaska, so this is particularly interesting to me. So Nick Begich, this is some information about the candidate himself. So he's a Republican, he's a candidate for the US congressional district. And down here, we have all of the sources that have been added to Nick Begich's profile. And so these are all audio recordings where Nick Begich is speaking in some sort of political candidate capacity. Over here on the right, we have what I was referring to earlier as kind of the synthesis. These are all of the subjects that Nick Begich covers throughout all of these 17 different pieces of audio. And then we have all of the different, well, here's an example, support for the oil and gas industry in Alaska. That's obviously very important to Alaska voters. And if we click into claims, we can see all of the specific claims that Nick Begich makes. And this could be something that someone could opt into fact checking if they were interested. This one immediately jumps out at me. About 10% of the state's lands were taken offline by the Harris-Biden administration. That's a quote from a debate that took place between Nick Begich and Mary Peltola, his opponent. We can also drill down into a specific piece of audio. So I'm clicking on this one. This is the Southeast Conference of 2002. So this was 2 years ago. And it's a bit of a candidate forum that took place in Southeast Alaska, where Nick Begich and Sarah Palin were discussing different issues. And you can see here, these are the different subjects that Nick Begich covers that have been analyzed. This one is of particular interest to Alaska voters, mineral resources in the Tongass National Forest. He makes this claim here that in the Tongass National Forest, 50 out of 50 critical minerals on the critical minerals list are in Alaska, that's kind of an interesting claim that if I were a journalist, I might be interested in, seeing if that's actually true and maybe writing a piece about it. And if we want to hear where he speaks about that, I can go to this timestamp here, which is provided for me.
I guess the question would be how all of this is gathered, how you're able to put all of this together as a tool.
Yeah. So this is a relatively new project. So some of this has been added by our team, and a lot of it has also been added by journalistic organizations that have signed up to use Parser. So we have, for instance, a few newsrooms from Colorado that have signed up to join us, and they recently did a debate between, their public radio stations hosted a debate between candidates Adam Frisch and Jeff Hurd in Colorado's 3rd congressional district, and so they added material. They added this debate to basically look back at what was said in that debate. So it's kind of a combination of us plus all of the newsrooms that are part of the Parser platform. So it's really kind of a big collaborative network, and that's kind of where we want to get to.
Do you see yourselves as being nonpartisan?
Absolutely. Yeah, that is completely core to Gigafact's mission. And, maybe it's a bit of a naive place to stand these days, but we believe that nonpartisanship is possible and imperative for regaining the trust of audiences across the US.
So how are you able to reach out to news organizations, newspapers?
Yeah, it's been a nice combo of kind of, we're a member of the Institute for Nonprofit News, which is kind of a professional organization of all of these new nonprofit news organizations that are cropping up around the country. And so we have relationships there, but we've also just kind of had a word of mouth growth of Parser, which has been really great to see. So this is a problem for journalists across the country, having to sift through audio and do that labor of sitting and listening for hours and hours. And so I think that this is meeting a need.
With the social media out there today and all of the posts, and even some of the tapes that you might refer to, very often candidates, it seems, are saying, I didn't say that, or that, or it was taken out of context, etc. So how are you able to determine in providing this information to newsrooms what's real, what isn't, etc.?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, what's nice about Parser is it is an archive. And so what is added to a given person's profile actually is going to be there for the future. And you can go back and reference that transcript. You can reference that recording. So that's kind of one part of the question, which is, we can actually say, you did say this, we have a record of it, even if it was, deleted from Facebook or something, we have an audio recording that lives on Parser. So that's one part of your question. The second part is, how do you determine that original audio recording is in fact real, or true or verifiable, right? Where it actually is that person speaking. And for that, we rely on sort of the journalistic professionalism of the newsrooms that come onto this platform to do that verification and make sure that they are not adding something that has been deceptively edited, for instance, or is some sort of deep fake. We're relying on the journalists themselves to make those determinations. So that's kind of the approach that we're taking right now. And these newsrooms are total pros. And so they understand when they come onto this platform that because this is a reflection of a given candidate's positions, it's important that those are real.
And of course, AI can be very helpful in going through everything. At the same time, the other side of the coin when it comes to AI is it can be used to create things that aren't so good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you talk to professionals in this field who are working on trying to identify when something is AI generated versus when it's real, it's kind of an arms race, right? The people who are working on doing this kind of separation of what is real and what is fake are always, trying to compete with the latest iteration of this new technology. So it's definitely we think the use of AI in journalism is definitely a two-sided coin, right? AI creates or has the ability to create material that's false, that can mislead, but it can also be used by journalists to enhance their work, enhance their capabilities, and so forth.
I
Like all
read
technology, double-sided sword.
you have a phrase that you've used, I think, called the truth sandwich, or at least one of the newsrooms that you work with.
Yeah. And that's a mechanism that they use where they I think that's sort of like a journalistic mechanism that they use where they sort of say what's actually real, they explain what the alleged claim might have been, and then they reiterate at the bottom kind of what the truth is. And it's just kind of a linguistic device to make sure that they're really kind of pushing home the message of like what the facts are.
So who can make use of your tools and how?
Yeah. So the tools are open to journalistic organizations across the United States. If you are a newsroom who is covering the elections in any way, you're more than welcome to reach out to me at my email. We're making it available for free also in the lead up to the election. So this is, it costs you nothing to get onboarded. But you can reach out to me at robyn@gigafact.org, and my email is robyn@gigafact.org.
The website, once again, is Gigafact, gigafact.org. Robyn Sundlee, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.